I'm Tim Crawford with Flexcut Tools, and I've been wood carving since 1995. And since starting, I've been using Flexcut tools. Today I'll be demonstrating the beginner craft carver set by Flexcut. The set includes the boot blank and all the tools necessary to complete this project. So let's get started. Hi, today this is the blank that you have in your craft kit, and what I want to show is how to lay it out, how to get started. One of the first things that I suggest, and I usually use a pencil to lay out, is that you need to establish the center line around this boot. And so you establish a center line here, up and down across the boot. And what I will do is I'm actually going to use also a magic marker here so it prints a little better. And you can see then the lines on the boot. This is going to help in rounding the edges of the boot. And one thing, no matter what size, when you reprint this or make a new copy of the boot, whether it's a thicker stock or even a thinner stock, be sure and drill the hole first. This boot has come pre-drilled, ready for toothpicks. And after you have laid this out, and here's the dimensions, you know that this is how wide this is. You're going to simply come around and also mark the edges here. This edge is going to give you then, and you can do that with just a pencil, because it's much easier with a pencil and that. This is going to give you the layout and the circumference that is going to be needed up here to round the back side of the boot, and also then the front side of the boot here. One of the things that I do, and depending upon the size, I keep coins laying on my workbench, and you can see that provides then a nice circumference. In this case, we'd be using a quarter as the guide, and all you do is have to hold that on there and simply take a pencil and run it around, and that gives you a nice circle to be carving to. One way also to carve then the bottom is using the same coin to make the toe. You'd simply hold the coin down there and take your pencil, make a curve on the toe, and to round the heel, you do the exact same thing. Hold the coin on and make a nice circle. So then you have the bottom laid out, and you have the sides. And this dimension here is the same as this dimension here. Makes it rounding it much, much easier. Today what I want to point out also is on the grain. The grain of this boot, and that will be carving, the grain is running up and down on the boot, so it's going up and down along the boot here. And you can see on the grain here, there again is running straight up and down. And one thing that you want to be careful of is that the front part of the boot actually curves in. So you have grain coming down here, and you also have grain that comes up here. And you'll want to be carving down this way and also up. So you just simply take the skew and hold it in your palm. The wooden handles come with it, where all you have to do is interchange them. And in mounting these, you always want to keep your hand off to the side. Simply slide it in, and it slides back out quite easy. So when you start, we're simply going to start and cut and start to round this project. This skew is the SK308 and the handle is the 100. And you can see here, you just remove that. And you're coming clear back to your pencil line. In this case, I have a much darker line, and we'll be taking that off. When you round the top, you want to be very careful on chipping that off, bringing it back to your line that you made, rounding it with the coin there, and slicing that off. But you want to bring that in to the line and just take the line off. That gets you down to where you're rounding. You don't want to take too much off. There again, you notice that I'm turning the boot to get down and into this and when you take off those chips, you need to come from the bottom up because of the grain. The back's a little easier to round off because the grain is pretty straight. And you see these little Western boots, they come in many different styles and shapes, and you get to where you can put a few different accents on them. And some people like to leave their line on for a little bit and then go back and take it off. I leave the center line on, which is this rear center line, only as a guide. It's just rounding it off. You just have to keep taking nice easy strokes. Keep the skew going right up through it. And I just point out that I use my left thumb to sort of guide that skew. That way it's a better control when you have both hands guiding that skew up through. There again, when you're going to do the other part of the heel, you have to turn it around. And I always take ½ inch or so and just get that down, rounded around to that heel. And then move up as I continue to round up. And here you have some saw marks on the boot that you'll want to be taking off also in the rounding process. And you can see here that I have it just about rounded right down to the line that we drew for a round. Okay, we've rounded this heel, and now we're going to move to the toe and round the toe. One thing you have to remember is that the grain here is running up and down, and so in rounding the toe, you want to make sure that the toe's down to the circle line here, but then also start cutting from the tip of the sole part of the tip of the toe up, and round this off in here. So we'll get started with the skew, and I will get this down to where it is a little bit down to our coin mark here. actually start to round this off. And in rounding the toe, you also sort of want to remember that on boots and shoes, when you are rounding it, you're going to narrow one side. And we have this center line that is also in here. It's good to pencil that in. Gives you an idea of where you're coming into. With this sort of being a boot, I want to narrow down to one side, so I have this center line, and you just come off the center line and bring this down. And this will give the sensation of that this is a left-handed boot coming in. And I will be taking off then all of this area here. And if you keep your skew nice and sharp, you can just pull that off real easy. You'll come up and also then round right up through the area of the boot. And you want to be careful. Also like to demonstrate here, taking out the tool, still rounding the toe, and taking using the gouge also. So you simply slide that in, and then using it, and you're simply using your wrist to come up and take off that wood area. And you see that using this number 11 1/4-inch gouge, you can take off quite a bit of wood and round that up, stepping up just each time as you go back across there. And you would do the same on the other side. Notice also on this cut, I have it where it appears that I'm actually cutting right back to myself. Using the gouge this way and just keeping it very close, small cuts, you can see that it's very controlled in the cut. You can only take smaller cuts that way, but it certainly does provide an avenue to take off wood coming up through there. And you can also then get the bends of the boot started. And the blades are real easy and quick to change. And you simply then smooth up that area a little bit. And since the gouge has left just a little rounding cuts in there, you want to be sure and just sort of smooth them off. And do the same on the other side.
And there you go, you're starting to at least get the shape of the boot in on that with the toe rounded. And you can take off. These are simply grain marks. Next we'll be rounding the ankle area here and getting the ankle in a little bit. Well, we've rounded the toe and the heel. One of the things on the boot, if you look at a worn boot, you have a section that usually dips in just a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually dip this in and carve this out to give it a worn look. You also down here have a double, usually a double layer where the heel comes around and you have this double layer, and just above there it dips in. Now you can do this with either one of the tool or the gouge, the skew or the gouge. In this case I'm just going to do it with the skew. It's very simple. You simply go put a few cuts down and turn the boot around and bring a few cuts up, and you've got a little bit of a dip in there. I'm going to take off this rear center line because I don't really need it anymore, so I'm going to carve those lines actually off that I put on just for visual sight purposes. But also sort of taking the saw marks off the boot. And there you can see that this boot then has a little bit of a dip here to look worn, and when we put the accent marks on it, why it will accent it even a little more. You want to remove the saw cuts from the sole. You can see that we have some saw cuts here. Also down in the where the heel meets the sole, you'll want to clean that up just a little bit, simply by taking the skew and making stock cuts down along that edge. You can also, if you're so inclined, you can put a pencil mark in there and then remove that pencil mark or cut down to it. In removing the saw cuts, you're actually going across the grain, so you need to make sure that the skew is nice and sharp, or your knife is nice and sharp. And simply by going across them on a very thin basis, you're going to be able to remove the lines, and you're also then going to make that smoother. I always put my name on the bottom, and that way when I give them to people, why they're at least know who did carve them. And when you're cutting, then the toe of this boot is actually up. You can sand this if you're so inclined to get these marks off, and as you can see here, I still have a little bit of where I had narrowed this boot, so I need to come back over and bring that in and to take that line off and take the front off. Now in this, you have to remember the grain is running up and down here, so you'll actually want to cut this back up rather than trying coming down on the grain. You'll want to cut this up, and simply by taking the skew and running it down across there. You'll want to keep this as flat as possible. You don't want to round the bottom in any way. This is a small project, and you need as nice a flat area as you can by putting some toothpicks in it, or small flowers, or whatever you put in it. You'll want to make sure that it's as flat on this bottom edge as you can. Of course, they being sawed, they're nice and flat, and so you want to continue with that being nice and flat. So it'll still stay nice and flat, and you can see I've removed most of the saw marks on this area, and also have been able to take off all the black lines which I had put on. Normally I would use a pencil to draw in the lines, the accent lines on the boot. What I'm going to use today, though, is a black magic marker so they stand out. And it's very simple. You have to put in the sole where the upper leather is separated from the bottom sole here, in carving, putting that line on, and then we're going to be taking that line off. So you bring that line right around, and just think of a sole of a cowboy boot or a work boot where they come in here. And on the heel, you naturally want the heel a little thicker, so you bring that around and bring it around here. You can see putting these in, I just try to darken it up for the demonstration purposes. Also put a toe on. And you can bring the line down here. So the two pieces of upper leather on most boots they have. It's always good to make sure too that the top is done. They're even on both sides. And simply bring that down and into this area. Now to take those off, here's another boot which I've put two designs on, basically the same as you can see, and I've cut this one. I want to demonstrate here. There again, take the skew out, and this is the first time we're going to be using the V tool. And the V tool here in this case is the SK307. It's a 70 degree that you're going to receive, that you receive in your pack. And to simply do that, you have to remember still you're cutting with the grain, and in this case I'm going to go up and cut right along this boot area and basically take the line off, and do the same on the other side. Come right from where the heel meets the sole, and right up. One thing with a V tool, you want to make sure that the wings or the tops of the V never go really below the wood. Now it's a little harder going across and separating this because you're going across the grain. The nice thing about Flexcut is that I previously mentioned they come razor sharp, and they will cut right across the grain and not leave any marks. And you're going to come up here and you're going to come up to the actual toe part and stop, and then you come back to this side and start again and come up along the other side of the boot, taking out your line and coming up to the front of the toe. And sometimes you have to go back over it. You don't try to take too much off at once. Sometimes you have to make 2 or even 3 passes to get all of them cut off. And to do the toe, the same thing. You're coming up from the bottom and you come up across and basically stop right at the top. And you come to the other side and come up and stop at the top. And that puts in the toe. And to do the heel, you're doing the same thing. You're starting at the side, coming around the heel, up over, and stop at the midpoint on the back, turn the boot around, and come over, and come up, and stop at the midpoint on the back. And you're going to do the same thing with this arch, or where the double leather is on the heel. Come up, come around, stop at the center line, come back over here, come up, and come around, right in. And you can go back through and make sure that you have all your lines off. One thing here is if you have also a smaller V-tool, you can actually make these a little deeper, and they will then stand out a little bit more. Or in finishing, sometimes if you use a stain, they have a tendency to come out, and the lines will come out a little better. That's basically using the V-tool to make the separation between the sole and the upper leather and the heel in the upper leather. Now we have the boot pretty well finished with all the lines in, separating the soles and the toe, and what we're going to do is put in some accent marks. With the accent marks, you want to put in and sort of really bring the boot to life with some of the bends, also where we have narrowed it back here, that will have some bends in. You can either use the V-tool if you want those lines sharper, or I prefer to use the gouge in this situation and put them in a little more rounding. You can also use the number 11 1/8 gouge versus the 1/4 inch if you have one of the bigger sets or something. But to put in some accent marks, you simply need to, you can actually pencil them in if you want to, and I just prefer to sort of go along, look at where they're bending, and bring those in. And I'll put 3 or 4, and you can also see where some of the knife marks are, and remove those a little bit with these accent gouges. If you have blemishes in the wood, it's a good place to do that. Also on the front, because the boots have a tendency to bend forward, you want to bring this in and bring the line clear across. In your kit, you only get one handle. If you're so inclined, you don't like to change the handles, Flexcut does sell other handles. They're 3 for $30 and can be ordered so you don't have to change handles back and forth. But you can see here I've put in just a few little grooves to sort of bring that boot to life here, and you might bring this one back just a little further, and you just to your liking on what you like to, how wrinkly you want to see this boot. And with a few touch-ups, when I finish the top here, we'll do some finishing and have the boot ready to go. Today we're going to finish the boot. I finished all of the boots in many different ways. Probably the preferred is boiled linseed oil and wax mixture. I've also used the Minwax stain to make them a little bit darker, or the poly wipe. But with the linseed oil, you can do a couple different methods. You can actually just pour the boiled linseed oil into a container and dip the boot, or today I'm going to just use and brush a little linseed oil on, and you brush it on very liberally because you're going to let it sit and then wipe it off. Naturally the bottom will take a little more. It doesn't really take too much. A couple tablespoons actually does a very good job on the boot. And just make sure you get it down into the grooves. This will help preserve it and also gives it a little good color. And make sure you get it into the accent marks. Sometimes staining those accent marks, or even if you take the stain will have a tendency to darken the grooves. This will leave the boiled linseed oil, and make sure you use boiled linseed oil, not regular linseed oil. It'll just take a little longer. But you can see just by putting that there and then leaving it sit, you're in a good situation that it'll have a tendency to mark and come out, bring out the color in the different accent areas. Another way to finish them is with strictly a wax. In this particular case, this is a golden oak. Gives a nice finish. I keep two brushes. I keep a brush that I have labeled as on and one that's labeled as off. Just for the wax, all you have to do is have an on brush, and I just brush it on and brush it in. Make sure the biggest thing is to brush it into the grooves, and you can. There again, this wax has a little bit of an oak stain. It's a light oak stain, so and you don't need much. You just need enough to get down and into those groove areas. And I use more of the tip of the brush to get down into the grooves. Be sure and get the accent marks that you put in to make that boot look more worn. Some of the and when you get the bottom line, you just make sure you get down and in I hope that you enjoy the carving. You can let that dry just a few minutes, even like with the linseed oil. Then I wipe that off, the excess linseed oil, and let it dry overnight. And you have a nice booth. And linseed oil has it as a lighter color. Some people like to put a stain under it. With the wax, you can then take, after it dries, take another brush. I know people that use shoe polish, but you want to have a brush that you take off and sort of just brush off that excess. I always let it dry even a little bit more, and then wipe it with a paper towel. And you come out with a nice looking, and you can see how the accent marks in the wood grain is going to then stand out even a little more. Nice thing about a brush is you can get it down through the grooves. Then you can take the boot, and whether it's finished with this is finished with linseed oil, or you can then just put a few toothpicks in, and you have a nice finished boot here. These are all out of basswood, and even though they're out of basswood, you can see that it shows the green and some other color. You can also, if you feel that they're going to be handled a lot, you can take the boot and finish it with a polyurethane spray. That will give it a little bit of a gloss in that. But they make excellent gifts. Hope that you enjoy your carving. If you're so inclined, there are other products with Flexcut that you can get through their catalog or their website. One of the ones that I recommend is if you're so inclined, on one of the first purchases should be your KN300. It provides not only the detailed knife, but it also provides the small detail knife, and it also gives you some compound. The whittler's kit, with those two knives, you can do just about any project that comes along. So I hope that you enjoy, and from Flexcut, its staff, Steve Bain, the owner, we wish you happy carving.